in hand. They weren't fighting over politics or power. They were dueling over a dessert. A pie so luxurious, so rare and so personal that one man was willing to die for it. This is the story of a fatal recipe. A tale of stolen pride, almonds and blood on the cobblestones. The man who started it all was Lord Algernon Blackstone, a lover of French cuisine and rumoured to be obsessed with perfecting a single dish. An almond tart with a honey glaze scented with citrus and rose. He served it at a private dinner for a royal envoy. And the pie was the star of the night. But among the guests was Sir Geoffrey Hale, a rival noble known for his own culinary ambitions. Days later, the exact same pie appeared at a banquet thrown by Sir Geoffrey. Same crust, same fragrance, same garnished almonds, arranged in a perfect spiral. Lord Algernon was enraged. He accused Geoffrey publicly of stealing the recipe. Tempers flared, insults flew, and the only proper course of action for gentlemen of the time was a duel. At sunrise, they met in Hyde Park. Witnesses say Algernon fired first and missed. Geoffrey's shot struck true. Algernon fell. Geoffrey lived, and the pie lived on with him. Now, centuries later, we can bring it back. Let's make the almond pie that sparked a noble feud. Start with one pie crust, either puff pastry or buttery short crust. In a bowl, combine 1 cup of almond flour, half a cup of sugar and half a cup of softened butter. Blend until creamy. Add 2 eggs, the zest of 1 lemon and a teaspoon of rose water. If you want a deeper flavor, add a pinch of clove or cinnamon. Mix it all until smooth and fragrant. Pour the filling into your pie crust and spread it evenly. Bake at 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 175 Celsius for about 30 to 35 minutes until golden on top. Let it cool, and if you're feeling fancy dust, with a little powdered sugar. Take a bite and you'll taste why this dish was worth fighting for. It's soft but rich, floral and nutty with a light citrus lift. You get the sense that this was more than dessert. It was status, it was skill. It was pride on a plate. The pie didn't just end a life, it created a legacy. And now you've brought that taste of history back to life. If you enjoyed this story and want to taste more of the past, hit that like button, subscribe for more, and share this with someone who'd duel over dessert. This is Tasting History, where every bite tells a story.
They did not fight for glory. They fought for belief, a belief so strong it demanded sacrifice, secrecy, and silence. Long before the world spoke of ninjas, there were the Hashashin, the original assassins of the Middle East. From deep within the Alborz mountains of Persia, in a fortress called Alamut, the old man of the mountain trained a legion of killers unlike anything the world had ever seen. Cloaked in mystery and sworn to death, they would become a nightmare whispered by kings, caliphs, and crusaders alike. At the heart of their legend was not just the blade, but the mind. The Hashashin were not butchers. They were surgeons of power. They would spend weeks, even years, studying a target. They would embed themselves as servants, scribes, merchants, even lovers. And then, when the moment struck, they would deliver their message with a single cut, often in public, always in silence. A message that no man, no matter how powerful, could hide from death. One of the earliest kills etched into history was the assassination of Nizam al-Mulk, the vizier of the mighty Seljuk Empire. He was cut down on the road by a man disguised as a wandering dervish. No shouts, no struggle, just steel and blood in the dust. But it would not end there. The Hashashin would strike again and again, Advisors, governors, warlords, even crusader commanders like Conrad of Montferrat, who fell in 1192 to a pair of young assassins posing as monks. He embraced them as holy men. He died with their daggers between his ribs. But among the shadows, there were hearts still beating. Layla al-Khorasani, raised within Alamut's inner sanctum, was both blade and bait, a deadly fusion of beauty and precision. She could poison a goblet in front of a man and make him thank her for the wine. She had killed a Mamluk commander in his own bed, then wept over his corpse as if mourning a lover. But she had never truly loved, not until Khalid, the son of a Damascus noble, whose passion for poetry and politics drew her in like a flame. Her orders were clear: kill him. He was a sympathizer to the Crusaders, a traitor to the faith. A threat. But Layla hesitated. Their nights became long and tender. She told herself it was just a tactic until it wasn't. When word reached Alamut that she had failed to act, she was summoned back. But instead of punishment, she was given a new mission: kill Khalid and prove her loyalty. This time she obeyed. She entered his quarters one final time, whispered a poem he had written into his ear, and slid her blade beneath his ribs. But what the order had not counted on was what she found hidden in his chambers: a map, a plan. Evidence that Khalid was not betraying Alamut, but uncovering a plot against it. The real traitor was someone inside. Someone close to Hassani Saba himself. And so the game shifted. Layla disappeared from the ranks, but she did not go far. She hunted in secret. She found the betrayer, Farid al-Nasir, a high-ranking assassin who had been feeding information to the Seljuks for gold and favor. He had orchestrated Khalid's execution to cover his tracks. Layla killed him slowly, not for Alamut, but for herself. For Khalid. For the truth that had been buried beneath the lies. Meanwhile, the world outside continued to burn. The Hashashin's most daring moment came when they infiltrated the court of Saladin himself, the great Muslim general who had united Egypt and Syria. Twice they tried to kill him. Once they left a dagger on his pillow with a note, "We are closer than your breath." Saladin increased his guard. He did not sleep the same for the rest of his life. Other women, too, rose within the ranks. Zara of Tyre, who famously seduced a Crusader bishop and assassinated him during Mass with a blade hidden in a holy relic. Or Saria, who posed as a concubine to a Byzantine general, only to slaughter him during a banquet. Her escape recorded in stunned Greek scrolls as a ghost that wore perfume. They were not just assassins. They were symbols. The Hashashin weren't an army. They were a message. A message that no man, no matter how powerful, could rule by fear alone. because fear could bleed. Eventually, the Mongols came. Hulagu Khan brought fire and siege engines to the mountains. In 1256, Alamut fell, its libraries burned, its leaders executed. But the fire didn't end there. The Hashashin had planted seeds in every kingdom, every court, every creed. And even as their fortress turned to ash, their legacy took root. Layla was never seen again. Some say she died at Alamut's gates, blade in hand, eyes on the horizon. Others say she lived, passing her teachings on to a new generation, a hidden line of assassins in the deserts, the palaces, the shadows of every empire that rose and fell after. Today we use the word assassin casually. But the truth is buried deep in those mountains, in blood, in silence, in the echo of a dagger's whisper. Before the ninja, before the spy, before the agent in a suit with a silenced gun, there were the Hashashin. And they were never just killers. They were believers. They were lovers. They were legends. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. If you would like to see more, hit that subscribe button. Share to support the channel.
The next Great War will not begin with a warning. It won't start with boots on the ground or jets screaming overhead. It will begin in silence, a perfectly calm sky, pierced not by aircraft, but by hundreds of tiny synchronized dots rising from ships, bunkers, and towers. They look like insects at first, until you realize they're machines. Autonomous, cold, already choosing their targets. In 2021, the Kargu-2 drone was deployed in Libya, and it made history. Without waiting for human input, it hunted down and attacked a retreating soldier. It was the first time a weapon made the decision to kill entirely on its own. No trigger was pulled, no permission given. Just a machine, a target, and an algorithm doing what it was built to do: end a life. That single moment rewrote the rules of war. Across the globe, military leaders and defense companies took note. What followed was not a pause for ethical discussion. It was a race. A rush to develop faster drones, smarter weapons, and battlefield networks that could operate without human interference. No soldier hesitates like a machine that doesn't care. Swarms are now the future. Hundreds of autonomous drones flying in coordinated packs, adapting in real time. China has demonstrated AI-controlled aerial swarms navigating terrain and changing formation mid-flight. The United States has tested air-launched mini-drones deployed from fighters. Turkey's Kargu and Alpagu swarms are already combat-capable. Once launched, they think together, like a hive. If one is destroyed, the others instantly adjust. No chain of command, just decision and action. Now imagine standing beneath that swarm as it descends. The sky flickers with blinking lights, each one identifying heat signatures, marking movements, and communicating with its neighbors. Anti-air systems can't keep up. The swarm breaks apart, circles wide, and surrounds its prey. You could shoot down 20 and still be overwhelmed by 200 more. There's no commander to kill, no HQ to strike. The intelligence is everywhere, in every unit. On the ground, the evolution is even more visceral. Robot quadrupeds, what once looked like science fair projects, now patrol test zones with mounted rifles. In the US, Ghost Robotics has demonstrated armed dog-like machines that climb stairs, stabilize under fire, and aim with deadly precision. China's models can follow soldiers into the field, scan terrain for ambushes, and potentially kill on sight if programmed to do so. These aren't future concepts. They are here now, waiting for mass deployment. Picture a city block at night. Sirens are silent. A mechanical form walks alone, scanning windows, identifying threats, relaying data to no one. because it doesn't need anyone. When the moment comes, it doesn't scream or hesitate. It fires. Then it moves on. This is not a drone strike from miles away. This is execution on foot, in neighborhoods, against targets chosen by sensors, not conscience. Even borders are no longer patrolled by men. In South Korea, semi-autonomous gun towers watch the DMZ. They can detect, track, and, if authorized, fire on human targets without direct contact. Some claim human approval is always required. Others whisper that the line between authorization and automation is thinner than we think. Up above, lasers are changing the air war entirely. The U.S. Navy's Helios system has already been installed aboard warships, a directed energy weapon capable of vaporizing drones and missiles with pinpoint accuracy. It doesn't explode, it doesn't make noise. A silent beam of light hits a target, and it's gone. Israel's Iron Beam can shoot down short-range rockets with the same technology. China is developing laser platforms to disable satellites, making war in space a quiet, blinding affair. At sea, the shift is just as dramatic. The U.S. Sea Hunter is an AI-powered submarine tracking ship that requires no crew. It can trail an enemy sub for months without a single human on board. Unmanned underwater drones now can ocean floors, laying mines or surveilling ships. War at sea is no longer a matter of fleets. It's a matter of silence. Whoever...
Before slavery became a stain on one nation's past, it figures like Mansa Musa of Mali and Idris Aluma of Cameroon.
In the beginning, there were no borders. The American Civil War. A brutal conflict that shaped the soul of a nation. This is the story of how the United States of America tore itself apart, and what it took to stitch itself back together. It is a war still misunderstood, still debated, and still alive in the conscience of a country it nearly destroyed. This war was not inevitable, but it was years in the making. It was not simply North against South. It was economy against economy, future against past, and freedom against bondage. Slavery had become the spine of the Southern economy. It was embedded in every law, every institution. Millions of black men, women, and children were considered property. They had no rights, no voice, no protection. Meanwhile, the North was changing rapidly. Factories were rising. Immigrants were pouring in. Cities were growing. There were still racists in the North. But the North did not depend on slavery to survive. And more people were calling for its end. Laws tried to calm the storm. The Missouri Compromise admitted Missouri as a slave state and Maine as free. The Compromise of 1850 included the Fugitive Slave Act, angering many in the North. The Kansas-Nebraska Act opened new lands to slavery by popular vote. Bleeding Kansas erupted in violence. It became clear. Compromise was failing. In 1857, the Dred Scott decision declared that no black person could ever be a citizen. That decision struck like thunder. It confirmed to millions that the system was deeply corrupted. Then came John Brown, an abolitionist who believed slavery would only end through bloodshed. In 1859, he led a raid on a federal armory at Harper's Ferry. He wanted to spark a slave revolt. He failed and was executed. But in death, he became a symbol. A martyr to abolitionists, a terrorist to the South. The election of 1860 was the final fracture. Abraham Lincoln won the presidency without carrying a single Southern state. The South panicked. They believed Lincoln would abolish slavery outright. South Carolina was the first to leave the Union. 10 more states followed. In early 1861, they formed the Confederate States of America. They elected Jefferson Davis as their president. and they began seizing federal property within their borders. Then came Fort Sumter, a Union fort in the harbor of Charleston, South Carolina. Confederate forces surrounded it and demanded surrender. When the Union refused, they opened fire. The American Civil War had begun. Many believed the war would last weeks. Instead, it lasted 4 years. It became a grinding, bitter, and costly struggle. At the First Battle of Bull Run, Union troops panicked and fled. It was a wake-up call. The South would not be easily defeated. At Antietam, over 23,000 men were killed, wounded, or missing in a single day. It remains the bloodiest day in American history. The dead lay in rows, unburied, untouched. The scale of death was staggering. Gettysburg saw 3 days of fighting and over 50,000 casualties. It marked the high water mark of the Confederacy. After Gettysburg, the South would never again launch a major offensive in the North. In the West, Union forces captured New Orleans and took control of the Mississippi River. General Ulysses S. Grant laid siege to Vicksburg and starved the city into surrender. This cut the Confederacy in half. General William Tecumseh Sherman then began his march to the sea. He destroyed railroads, burned crops, and tore through Georgia. He practiced total war, aiming to break the South's ability and will to fight. Meanwhile, President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. It declared that all enslaved people in Confederate states were free. It did not immediately end slavery. But it changed the purpose of the war. Now the Union fought not only for survival, but for freedom. Black men rushed to enlist. Over 180,000 served in the Union.
Rome. The name still echoes like a war drum across time. It began with blood. Romulus murdering his twin Remus. The first betrayal. The first throne. And from that moment forward, betrayal became tradition. Rome rose from dirt and ambition. It became an empire that devoured the world. But not through peace. Through war, seduction, strategy, and shadow deals. The Roman legions didn't just conquer. They engineered dominance. Roads that still exist. Bridges stronger than modern steel. And war machines capable of crushing civilizations. But behind the armor were lives no history book dares to explore. While generals bathed in glory, slaves built the empires, cleaned the wounds, and shared the beds. The Roman war machine ran on a code: discipline, honor, sacrifice. Yet its greatest victories came from merciless efficiency. Julius Caesar's conquest of Gaul led to over 1 million deaths and hundreds of thousands enslaved. When Vercingetorix, the great Gallic chieftain, surrendered, Caesar kept him in chains for 5 years before executing him in a Roman parade. That was mercy in Rome. Then came the Civil War, Caesar versus Pompey. Rome bled itself dry. The streets of Pharsalus flowed with Roman blood. Families turned on each other. Wives sent messages to assassins. Brothers fought in opposite legions. It was civil war in name only. It was slaughter for control. After Caesar's murder, the chaos didn't end. It simply shifted. Mark Antony, Cleopatra, Octavian. Love became a war tactic. Cleopatra seduced 2 Roman titans and nearly conquered Rome through silk and seduction. She bore Caesar a son. She made Antony abandon his duty. And when it all collapsed, they chose death over submission. The Battle of Actium ended it. Roman ships turned the sea red. Cleopatra's fleet burned, and her empire with it. Octavian became Augustus, the first true emperor. He created peace by destroying everyone who opposed him. That's what Rome called the Pax Romana, peace through absolute power. The emperors that followed were gods in flesh, or demons in disguise. Tiberius executed anyone who whispered against him. He filled his palace with treasures and things that cannot be discussed on YouTube. Caligula turned the palace into a brothel, named his horse a priest, ordered soldiers to collect seashells as spoils of war. Nero played the lyre while Rome burned. But he also built golden palaces and used Christian slaves as torches to light his gardens. Still, they were worshipped, because in Rome, image was everything. They called it virtus, virtue, But real Roman virtue meant power, fear, and legacy. Every war was recorded, every kiss between enemies remembered, every betrayal carved in marble. Love and loyalty were commodities, bought, traded, and sometimes destroyed. The Vestal virgins were supposed to remain pure, but one, named Licinia, fell in love with a consul. When discovered, she was buried alive. He was exiled. Their affair nearly triggered a riot. There were gladiators who loved noble women. One, a Thracian fighter named Spartacus, became a legend. He didn't just fight, he led a revolt of 70,000 slaves. Rome trembled. It took Crassus, one of the richest men in history, to defeat him. When Spartacus fell, 6,000 of his followers were crucified along the Appian Way, a road lined with corpses for miles. A warning carved in flesh. Rome's power stretched from Britain to Syria. They fought Persians, Germanic tribes, Numidians, Parthians, Egyptians, and they learned to use each of their enemies' strengths. And women. Roman generals often took lovers from conquered lands, not just for pleasure, but for intel, alliances, and control. Women like Boudica, queen of the Iceni in Britain, who rose after her daughters were violated. She led a rebellion that burned Roman cities to the ground. Rome nearly lost Britain. Or Zenobia of Palmyra, a queen who conquered Egypt and ruled as if she were a Roman herself. She spoke Latin, studied philosophy, and led armies. She was eventually paraded through Rome in chains. But her legend outlived the emperor who captured her. Women in Rome weren't powerless. They just played a different game. Livia poisoned rivals to make her son emperor. Agrippina seduced her own uncle Claudius and manipulated her way to becoming empress. She raised Nero, who later had her killed, fearing she was too powerful. Every family in Rome was a battlefield. Even love was a gamble of life or death. Some slaves who were loved were freed and became power players. Some lovers were set up as spies, and some romances, like that of Emperor Hadrian and Antinous, became divine legends. When Antinous drowned, Hadrian built statues across the empire. Cities bore his name. He became a god not for who he was, but for who loved him. Rome elevated love into legacy and weaponized it just as easily. But power corrupts, and emperors fell like dominoes. Commodus was strangled in his bath by a wrestler hired by his mistress. Caracalla was murdered while peeing on the side of a road. Elagabalus was hacked to death and thrown in the Tiber for his flamboyant rule and refusal to play Roman politics. Rome collapsed not in a single battle, but through decadence, betrayal, division, and arrogance. Invasions came, Huns, Goths, Vandals, but the empire was already dead in spirit. A corpse wrapped in gold. And still, Rome echoes. Its laws, its architecture, its betrayals. Every empire since has tried to imitate it. None have succeeded, because Rome was never just a city. It was an idea. A living god, a cult of ambition and seduction and blood, and behind its throne stood the forgotten. The slaves, the lovers, the warriors, the assassins. This is their story, Rome's real story. And now it's yours. If you're still watching, you know this isn't your average history lesson. You've just walked through the blood-soaked halls of power, love, and betrayal. You've seen Rome without the marble polish. So if you want more empires, more forbidden stories, more truths too bold for the classroom, then subscribe to the channel right now. Hit that like button and comment your favorite part of Rome's twisted legacy.
Once upon a time in old Europe, people started dying mysteriously and in large numbers, and the explanation, according to many, was not disease or bad sanitation. It was vampires. Yes, vampires. Dead people rising from the grave, sneaking into homes and draining the life from their neighbors. This wasn't just folklore whispered around campfires. Entire villages believed it. So did nobles, priests, and even doctors. The symptoms they saw: pale skin, weight loss, coughing up blood. Today we call that tuberculosis. Back then it was textbook vampire behavior. So what did they do about it? They grabbed shovels, marched to the graveyards and started digging people up. Once they opened a coffin, the body was judged on appearance. If it wasn't decomposing fast enough, that meant it was undead. Sometimes the stomach was bloated or there was blood at the mouth. Instead of realizing that these were normal signs of decomposition, they assumed the corpse had been feeding. So they acted. They removed hearts, cut off heads, drove stakes through chests, shoved garlic in mouths, and occasionally they poured boiling wine over the body for good measure. Because clearly vampires hate hot drinks. In some cases, they ground up the heart into ashes and made the family drink it. Because if Grandma's dying, the logical solution is to make her sip vampire dust. Medical science was still on vacation. One of the most famous cases happened in 1725 in Serbia. A man named Petar Blagojevich died, and soon after, 9 others followed. Locals said Petar had returned from the dead and attacked them. When they opened his grave, they claimed he looked too fresh and had blood on his lips. So they staked him and burned the body. The story spread across Europe, causing full-on vampire hysteria. Even the church stepped in, not because of the grave digging, but because vampires didn't fit the religious narrative. The church believed the dead should stay dead or wait peacefully for resurrection. Rising from the grave to bite your cousin didn't fit the theology. Eventually, science caught up. Doctors realized that tuberculosis, decomposition, and poor hygiene were to blame, not the undead. But by then, the vampire myth had taken hold. In 1897, Bram Stoker published Dracula and changed everything. Now, vampires had class. They wore capes, lived in castles, and made being undead look kind of cool. Fast forward to today. Vampires star in movies, TV shows, novels, video games, and Halloween costumes. They sparkle, smolder, and occasionally sell car insurance. But the truth behind their origin, it's a panic that came from fear, misunderstanding, and a complete lack of germ theory. So are vampires real? No. But the panic was. The superstition was. People truly believe this stuff. And that belief shaped part of our history. If you enjoyed this, hit like. Subscribe to see future videos. And share to support the channel. Because knowing things is power. The Wild West wasn't built with rules. It was carved out of chaos, grit, and the promise of something better, even if it killed you. It began with a gun in one hand and a dream in the other. Millions moved west, chasing gold, land, or freedom. What they found was a land untamed, where the law came second to survival, and every sunrise might be your last. Outlaws roamed like wolves, armed, hunted, and unafraid. Jesse James wasn't born evil. He was made by war. As a teenager, he fought in brutal guerrilla units during the Civil War. Afterward, he led a gang that robbed banks, trains, and anything else that moved. But Jesse didn't run. He wrote letters to newspapers justifying every heist. The people didn't see a criminal. They saw a modern Robin Hood. He was betrayed by his own gang, shot in the back of the head while adjusting a picture on the wall, by a man who wanted the reward money more than his loyalty. Billy the Kid was lightning in a human body. He danced between jail cells and gunfights, charming some and terrifying others. He spoke fluent Spanish, sang to children, and smiled before drawing on grown men. He once broke out of a 2-story courthouse by killing both his guards and riding off on a stolen horse. His luck ran out in the dark. Sheriff Pat Garrett waited in the shadows and put a bullet through him before he even knew what hit him. He was 21, one kill for every year he lived. But legends weren't just born with bullets. Bass Reeves was a name history nearly buried. Born into slavery, he escaped, lived among native tribes, and taught himself to track like a ghost. He became the first black U.S. Marshal west of the Mississippi. He couldn't read, but he memorized over 3,000 warrants, and he brought them in alive or dead. They say he once arrested his own son for murder. Because out here, justice didn't care about blood. The women of the West were harder than the land they walked. Calamity Jane rode through fire and madness, drank with generals, and fought off Indian attacks with a rifle in one hand and a cigarette in the other. She never married Wild Bill Hickok, but she never stopped loving him. She asked to be buried beside him. She was. Stagecoach Mary broke noses and rules. She delivered mail through blizzards and bandit country. She drank whiskey, chewed cigars, and carried a shotgun under her skirts. When one man called her slow, she knocked out his teeth. The town cheered. Even Belle Starr, the bandit queen, rode with Jesse James and ruled a gang of her own. She wore velvet gowns to court and pistols to dinner. She was murdered on a dirt road, and to this day no one knows who pulled the trigger. And then there was love. The Wild West was brutal, but love still bloomed in saloons, train cars, and tents on the edge of nowhere. Gunfighters wrote poetry. Cowboys whispered dreams under starlit skies. One outlaw, Harry Alonzo Longabore, better known as the Sundance Kid, fell so deeply in love with a schoolteacher, he took her across the world to escape the law. They fled to South America. They died in a shootout in Bolivia. Together. Love didn't soften the West. It made the pain worth surviving. Towns like Deadwood, Tombstone, and Dodge City weren't just backdrops. They were pressure cookers. Lawmen like Wyatt Earp, Bat Masterson, and Wild Bill Hickok walked the tightrope between order and anarchy. The OK Corral shootout lasted just 30 seconds, but it turned into legend. 3 men killed, dozens of lives changed. That's the West. Blink, and your whole world changes. The California Gold Rush brought 300,000 people stampeding westward in search of fortune. Most left with nothing. Some died with gold in their pockets and a knife in their back. And yet, people kept coming. The Transcontinental Railroad stitched the continent together like a wound being sewn shut. But it was built on the backs of immigrants, Chinese workers, Irish laborers, freed slaves. Whole mountains were blasted apart. Towns appeared overnight. Where the train went, civilization followed. And with it, the end of the true Wild West. By 1890, the US Census declared the frontier closed. But the truth is, it never died. The West didn't vanish. It evolved. The grit, the rebellion, the romance, it still runs in American blood. In every underdog, every fighter, every wild heart that refuses to be tamed. The Wild West isn't gone. It's just waiting for the right kind of soul to ride again. If this stirred something in you, like the spirit of the...
We look to the stars for answers, but what if the...
They don't teach this in school. They won't mention her in pirate movies. But the greatest pirate to ever live wasn't a man. Her name was Qing Shi. And she ruled the South China Sea with more power than most kings. Born in 1775 in Canton, she started life in a brothel. By the age of 32, she controlled the most feared pirate fleet in history. Her rise began when she married Zheng Yi, a feared pirate captain commanding the Red Flag Fleet. They ruled together for 6 years, conquering rival clans and expanding their influence. But when he died during a storm in 1807, chaos threatened to consume the empire they built. That's when Qing Shi took command. She didn't inherit the fleet, she secured it. By forging alliances, bribing key lieutenants and marrying Zheng Yi's adopted son, she ensured full control. This wasn't luck. It was power politics, pirate style. She restructured the entire pirate confederation. 6 fleets, red, black, white, blue, yellow and green, all answered to her. Each had its own admiral, but she commanded them all. She introduced one of the most brutal and effective pirate codes ever written. It enforced order where chaos once ruled. Under her, piracy became an organized business, efficient, ruthless, and terrifying. Her fleet grew to over 800 warships and 80,000 pirates. They attacked imperial convoys, seized merchant vessels, and collected protection money from entire coastal villages. She demanded tribute from major ports. If they refused, she destroyed their ships, burned their docks, and left no survivors. She defeated the Chinese Navy in open water, not once but several times. One legendary clash at the Pearl River Delta saw her fleet smash through a blockade of imperial warships, stealing their cannons and setting fire to their sails. The Qing government begged help from Portugal and Britain. Gunboats arrived. They failed. Qing Shi's tactics were unmatched. She used shallow draft ships to escape into coves where larger vessels couldn't follow. She faked retreats, then ambushed pursuing enemies. And she was a master of timing, striking during storms when defenders were weak. Her pirates once raided a salt monopoly warehouse, seizing the entire seasonal supply, then reselling it back to the government at a profit. She didn't just rob. She controlled markets. No one was safe. Fishermen, merchants, nobles, even tax collectors were forced to pay her tribute. She also expanded inland, controlling smuggling routes and punishing towns that resisted. Entire villages relocated to avoid her wrath. But her most surprising move wasn't violence. It was diplomacy. By 1810, the Qing dynasty was desperate. They offered her a full pardon, but she negotiated better. She walked into the Governor-General's palace with her top lieutenants unarmed. She demanded amnesty for her fleet, retention of their wealth, and official military jobs for her officers. She got it all. No execution. No prison. No betrayal. Just total victory. She retired with her fortune, opened a gambling house, and became a respected businesswoman. She raised a family. She lived until the age of 69, something nearly unheard of for pirates. She died peacefully. And history buried her under silence. But the facts remain. She commanded the largest pirate fleet ever recorded. She beat empires, outmaneuvered navies, and walked away untouched. Her name was Qingxi. If you learned something new, hit like. Subscribe for more untold history. And share this to help bring her story to the world.
They say I was born with cherry blossoms in my hair. My name is Akiko. Daughter of Lord Katsuro. Samurai. Warrior. Father. To the world he is a blade. To me he is a storm. Every morning, I wake before the sun kisses the mountains. My feet touch the floor with reverence. My breath becomes a prayer. Before the world demands anything of me, I reclaim silence. I do not choose my clothing. I do not choose my meals. I do not choose my fate. But I have learned to master the spaces in between. The pauses. The looks. The things not said. The boys train with swords in the courtyard below. Their grunts echo like war drums. I watch from behind the paper screen, still invisible. They sweat. They bleed. When I was 10, I picked up a bokken and laughed. Father saw me, and the laughter died. He said, "Your hands are for teacups, not blood." But what of my heart, Father? What of my fire? At mid-morning, I walk the gardens with Lady Hana. We speak of cherry blossoms, marriages, the weather. I nod. I smile. But beneath it, I dream of forests, of wind, of running so far no one can find me. And sometimes, I dream of him. The first time I saw him, he was sharpening his blade by the shrine. Torn robes. Old scars. No master. A Ronin. Father says they are shame-made flesh. But shame has never looked so human. He bowed, not as a servant, but as a man. And in that small moment, something ancient passed between us. Not love. Not yet. But recognition. At night, I write letters I will never send. To him. To the girl I am not allowed to be. To the gods who no longer answer. My mother's fan rests by my bed. Delicate. Beautiful. Breakable. Just like she was. Dinner is served on silence. Father sits at the head of the table, his eyes heavy with disappointment he never voices. The servants glide like ghosts. I do not speak unless spoken to. I chew the rice and swallow the sorrow. But tonight, I sneak out. Soft steps. No sound. I meet him in the temple garden. And for the first time, someone looks at me like I am not property. He speaks of the northern provinces, of honor lost and found. I speak of duty in cages. He touches my hand and I don't pull away. Just for tonight, I am not Akiko the daughter. I am Akiko the woman. The next morning, the ink on my pillow is still wet. Father has read the letter I never meant to send. The house is quieter than usual. The kind of quiet that comes before storms. He does not shout. He does not strike. He simply tells me, "You will marry General Ito in spring. There will be no further disgrace." That night, I do not write. I pack a blade beneath my robes. Mother once told me, "The world will not be kind to a woman who chooses her own path." She was right. But kindness was never what I wanted. I leave before sunrise. I do not cry. I do not look back. Now I live by my own code. I travel village to village, healing, helping, watching. Some call me a ghost. Others call me a warrior. But I call myself free. I am no one's daughter now.
The Book of Enoch, the forbidden text that reveals ancient secrets. The Book of Enoch is one of the most mysterious and controversial ancient writings ever discovered. Though it was once considered sacred by early Jews and Christians, it was later banned and declared non-canonical by most religious institutions. Yet the Book of Enoch remains a powerful window into a forgotten era, one where angels walked the earth, giants ruled the land, and secrets of the heavens were recorded in great detail. Believed to be written between 300 BCE and 100 BCE, the Book of Enoch is attributed to Enoch, the great-grandfather of Noah. In the Bible, Enoch is described as a man who walked with God and was taken to heaven without dying. This ancient text expands on his story dramatically. The Book of Enoch was considered scripture by many Jewish groups and early Christian sects. It was even quoted in the New Testament in the Book of Jude. However, by the 4th century, it was removed from most versions of the Bible. Only the Ethiopian Orthodox Church preserved it as part of its official biblical canon. For centuries, it was lost to the Western world. That changed in 1773 when Scottish explorer James Bruce returned from Ethiopia with 3 copies of the Book of Enoch in the ancient Ge'ez language. Since then, the book has fascinated theologians, historians, and conspiracy theorists alike. One of the most shocking parts of the Book of Enoch is its account of the Watchers, fallen angels who descended to earth and took human women as wives. This act, forbidden by heaven, resulted in the birth of the Nephilim, giant beings of immense strength and wickedness. These Nephilim corrupted humanity and brought chaos to the earth. The Watchers, led by angels named Semyaza and Azazel, also taught forbidden knowledge to humans. They revealed secrets of the stars, the moon, and the calendar. They introduced the use of metals, cosmetics, weaponry, and even sorcery. The Book of Enoch suggests that this forbidden knowledge accelerated humanity's downfall. God, angered by the corruption, sent the archangels Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, and Uriel to punish the Watchers and cleanse the earth. The Nephilim were destroyed in a great flood, one that parallels the story of Noah in the Bible. The Watchers were bound and cast into the depths, awaiting their final judgment. The Book of Enoch doesn't stop there. It also provides vivid descriptions of heaven and the cosmos. Enoch is shown the workings of the universe, how the sun and moon travel through the sky, how stars are governed by divine forces, and how time itself is measured by heavenly cycles. Much of this aligns surprisingly well with ancient astronomical systems, though interpreted through a mystical lens. Enoch also describes his journey through multiple heavens, layers of reality where different orders of angels dwell and where judgment and glory are administered. Some of these descriptions echo later Christian and Islamic ideas of heaven and hell, but in unique and fascinating ways. Another major theme in the book is the coming of a great judgment. Enoch speaks of a future day when the righteous will be rewarded, and the wicked, including both humans and fallen angels, will face eternal punishment. It even describes a Son of Man figure chosen by God who will sit on a throne of glory and judge all creation. This has led some scholars to draw parallels to Christian beliefs about Jesus, although the Book of Enoch predates the New Testament. So why was this book banned? The Book of Enoch challenges traditional religious narratives. It presents angels in ways that don't appear in the Bible. It introduces apocalyptic visions, celestial journeys, and supernatural beings that blur the lines between mythology and theology. It also places enormous importance on cosmic justice and divine secrets, topics that were deemed too controversial or heretical by later religious authorities. Yet today, the Book of Enoch is more accessible than ever. Translations are widely available, and researchers continue to debate its meaning, origin, and impact on Judeo-Christian thought. Some believe it holds lost truths. Others see it as a brilliant work of religious imagination. But one thing is certain. The Book of Enoch offers a captivating look into the beliefs of ancient people who saw the universe as a place filled with mystery, danger, and divine purpose. Knowledge is power. Like if you learned something, subscribe to see new content and share to support the channel.
Throughout history, war has taken many forms. But perhaps no kind of battle tests the human spirit more than a siege. Trapped within walls, cut off from food, hope, and reinforcements. A siege is not just a battle of weapons, it is a battle of patience, fear, and survival. These are the greatest sieges in history. The Siege of Troy, the Greeks versus the Trojans. It began with the abduction of Helen, and it lasted 10 years. The Greeks laid siege to Troy in a campaign filled with duels, deception, and death. Legends say it ended with the famous Trojan horse, a gift left at the city gates, hiding Greek soldiers within. When night fell, Troy was betrayed from the inside and burned to the ground. The Siege of Babylon, the Persians versus the Babylonians. Cyrus the Great of Persia faced one of the most fortified cities in the world. Babylon's walls were tall, wide, and guarded by the Euphrates River. But Cyrus diverted the river and marched his army through the dry bed at night. The city fell without a fight. It was one of the most brilliant siege tactics in ancient history. The Siege of Syracuse, the Greeks and Carthage combined versus the Roman Republic. During the Second Punic War, the Roman Republic attacked the Greek city of Syracuse. But the defenders had a secret weapon, Archimedes. The great inventor created catapults, mirrors, and defensive machines to hold off the Romans for nearly 2 years. Eventually, the city fell, and Archimedes was killed by a Roman soldier, despite orders to keep him alive. The Siege of Masada, Zealots versus the Roman Empire. In the deserts of Judea, a group of Jewish rebels held out against the Roman Empire atop a desert plateau. The Romans built a massive ramp over months to breach the fortress. But when they arrived, they found silence. Nearly 1,000 defenders had taken their own lives rather than be captured. It remains one of the most haunting sieges in history. The Siege of Constantinople, the Byzantine Empire versus Persians. The capital of the Byzantine Empire was tested more than once. In 717, it held firm against Arab forces. But in 1453, it faced the full force of the Ottoman Empire. Sultan Mehmed II brought cannons, including the massive bombard that shattered the Theodosian walls. After 53 days, Constantinople fell. The city became Istanbul, and the medieval era came to an end. The Siege of Tenochtitlan, the Aztecs versus the Spanish conquistadors. In the heart of modern-day Mexico, Hernán Cortés led Spanish forces against the Aztec capital. With the help of native allies and aided by disease, the Spanish laid siege to the island city. The canals turned red. Famine and smallpox ravaged the defenders. After 93 days, the Aztec Empire collapsed. The Siege of Vienna, Austrians versus the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire reached the gates of Europe's core. Vienna was surrounded. But a massive relief force led by Polish King Jan Sobieski launched the largest cavalry charge in history. The siege was broken. It marked the high water mark of Ottoman expansion into Europe. The Siege of Leningrad, Nazi Germany versus the Russians. Nazi Germany surrounded the Soviet city of Leningrad for nearly 900 days. In the freezing cold, over 1 million civilians died from starvation, shelling, and disease. Yet the city never surrendered. It was one of the longest and most tragic sieges in modern warfare. The Siege of Stalingrad, Nazi Germany versus Russians. Stalingrad wasn't a siege by walls, but by sheer destruction. Germany's Sixth Army pushed deep into the Soviet Union. But Soviet forces refused to break. Urban warfare took over, room by room, floor by floor. Eventually, Germany's army was surrounded and forced to surrender. It was the turning point of World War II. The Siege of Dien Bien Phu, Vietnamese versus the French. In the jungles of Vietnam, French forces set up a base at Dien Bien Phu. They believed they were safe, but the Viet Minh surrounded them in the hills and brought in heavy artillery. After 57 days, the French surrendered. It marked the end of French colonial rule in Indochina and the rise of the Vietnam War. The Siege of Sarajevo, Bosnia Civil War. In the Bosnian War, the capital city of Sarajevo was trapped for almost 4 years. Snipers targeted civilians. Artillery rained down on homes, schools, and hospitals. More than 10,000 people died, many of them children. It was the longest siege of a capital city in modern warfare. Sieges are not always won by force. Sometimes they are won by will, by the refusal to surrender, by hope that holds out even when the walls begin to crumble. From ancient stone cities to modern skylines, sieges have shaped the course of human history. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this. Subscribe to see future content. Sharing is caring.
In the year 1095, the cry of war shook the foundations of Europe. At the Council of Clermont, Pope Urban II summoned the faithful, urging them to take up the cross and reclaim the Holy Land. His voice thundered with divine fire. He promised remission of sins, eternal glory, and the chance to walk where Christ had walked. Across kingdoms and empires, lords, knights, and peasants alike answered the call. One of them was Elias of Rouen, a bastard knight with no inheritance, only a sword and ambition. He rode not for salvation, but for a name worth remembering. The crusade began not with banners, but with chaos. Peasant mobs marched first, ill-prepared and poorly led. They were slaughtered en masse by Turkish raiders before ever reaching Asia Minor. The real army followed, led by nobles like Raymond of Toulouse, Bohemond of Taranto, Godfrey of Bouillon, and others who mistrusted one another more than the enemy. In Byzantium, tensions flared. Emperor Alexios demanded oaths of loyalty before granting aid. Bohemond, ever the schemer, swore allegiance with a smile he didn't mean. In the shadows of Constantinople, Elias met Seraphine, a high-born Byzantine woman who defied protocol to tend to wounded crusaders. Their first meeting was brief, but her intelligence and fire haunted him long after they rode east. The march across Anatolia was hell. Heat scorched the land. Water was scarce. Turkish horsemen struck from the hills and vanished like ghosts. In Dorylaeum, the Crusaders were ambushed by Kilij Arslan's forces. The vanguard was nearly destroyed. Elias fought alongside Bohemond's men in the heart of the chaos, blood-soaked and battered, saving a wounded child who clung to his leg amidst the screams. Reinforcements arrived just in time. Victory came at a cost. Hundreds lay dead beneath the sun. Their armor melted to their bones. Infighting poisoned the crusade from within. Bohemond seized